buddy.
Hello.
Hi, I'm EntranceJew, and I'm accompanied by Tom R., the person who was also on the team Beaconomic Advisors for this year's Big Awful Jam 2016.
What an introduction.
Did you know that we've developed a game titled YWDH?
Are you asking me?
Yes.
Yeah, I knew that. The actual title is You Will Die Here, but we submitted it as just the initials so that we wouldn't give away um, the secret, the 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 motivation, the
The,
something about the game.
we didn't want to expose anything about the game because we wanted to have I think we really just wanted to have the introduction kind of be cinematic. I don't mean cinematic as in Transformers Michael Bay. I mean, like, it has a weight to it that you might not get if it was just a static splash screen like we've been doing, especially for the kind of nature that the game has.
Yeah, well, we wanted the reveal of the title to be impactful, and if you see the title on a website before you download it, then it kind of loses its impact, I would think.
Mhm.
You know, if the big reveal is the title,
That's the biggest, most exciting part about our game is finding out what it's named.
well, you know,
So, the development history of this game here is a challenged one. I took off to SGC and uh, RTX. I was on the road at 5 o'clock by the time that we'd finally figured out what the actual theme was, which was Games for Grandpa. And we couldn't pivot any of the ideas that we had come up with, which I believe was the purpose of pulling that stunt. So we had to come up with a new game while I was on the road so that we weren't wasting time, so to speak.
yeah, that's what happened, all right.
um, you came up with the idea, I believe. So,
Yeah, yeah. I think what happened was, I had a couple of different kind of ideas floating around in my head. One of them was the idea for the maze, and originally I'd wanted the fog to be hiding the fact that there wasn't any map where the fog was fully fogged, because the game was going to delete those sections and regenerate them as you walk over them. But that didn't come to pass. Well, that's okay, because um, that that type of generating and whatnot was just like kind of a programming exercise, almost more of a concept than it was a game. We should probably start at the beginning, because um, we have a few rules that some of it's common rules for doing a game jam. Um, you know, like don't overscope your game and do this and do that. And a couple of the ones that we really violated hard here were not doing procedural generating, because you'll spend the entire jam trying to tweak that, and make sure you have a solid mechanic before you do anything else. Like, write the mechanic down on a piece of paper before you start your game. And I didn't do that. I didn't do that at all. We probably spent at like half the month working away at making the game function before we even realized that it wasn't really a game.
Yeah, the danger of trying, and especially as a technically minded person, there's a real danger to what sounds like an interesting problem to solve. Is that like I could spend, like we said, a week or so solving that problem until I realized the problem that I solved isn't the problem that's going to make our game good.
Yeah, well, I mean, nominally, a game should be fun, and that comes from the mechanics. Your art and your sound, that kind of informs how you feel. That sets the tone. But whether a game is fun or not is pretty much down to the mechanics, and we threw that right out the window. I think it was kind of a fit of panic or something that
Mm.
happened.
Well, we didn't panic when the game jam started because we had a handful of ideas, and somehow of those pool of ideas, this one was the most actionable one because we could visualize it the best. Um, but that doesn't seem to translate to being entertaining uh, outright. Like the game isn't actively um, as engaging as one might find, say, a platformer. I still think it's interesting. I think it's nice to navigate around. I mean, if I shut my brain off, then I could easily spend an hour or several just playing without a time limit.
Yeah, well, I wasn't too worried about it until I don't know, maybe we had a week and a half or so left, and I was like, oh no, everything's gone all to hell. And then things got worse, but then we put the sound in, and then it really put everything into focus for me. And I was like, oh yeah, this is what's good about um, this game is the atmosphere. And I was really happy with the end result. Pretty much as soon as the music and some of the effects, like for the door, um, that really brought it together for me.
hmm Yeah, and man, I had like one of the first things that I said was like the sound and noise that door had to make, because like it was pivotal to the fact that you were even entering the doors. They may have well not existed if they didn't feel as heavy as they did, and that kind of like rings true for the whole game. Is that if it didn't have the tone captured right, then you know I don't even know if it would have been worth showing.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, well, we had a few other ideas when we were brainstorming for the other themes. One of the ones for games for grandma is you had this great idea where you would just record actual conversations with grandmothers and use the audio from that to make not not a dating sim, but a game that plays like a dating sim, where you gotta kind of like the idea is to navigate a conversation,
It's
and
like a visual novel, more or
yeah,
less.
yeah, and we kind of held on to some of that, where we were going to uh, do voice acting for the grandfather and every thought in the game. Actually, I don't know that that's made explicit. The text that comes up is Grandpa's thinking in our released game. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and it looks more like dialogue, I think. But maybe we fell down there.
Well, it makes thinking noises. So,
Oh yeah, that's right. Um,
hmm.
hmm. So yeah, maybe people will get it. I don't know. Maybe some people won't. Some people will.
A
Um,
lot of people have not gotten our game.
that's true. I think that's okay though. You can't. You know, if you take a video game as art, you can't have a piece of art that everyone is universally going to understand um, or agree with. I mean, a lot of the greatest uh, works of art, either movies, music, paintings, novels, any of that, um, it's not universal that something that is great is agreed upon as great by everyone, you know. Um, so, like a movie like 2001 is very critically divisive. Um, divisive? Dividing?
Divided.
Yeah, like some critics when it came out panned it. It's the thing is the people that liked it really liked it, and the people that didn't like it were like, "Wow, this is crap." So, not to compare our game with 2001: A Space Odyssey because that's silly. Um,
It has
but
monoliths.
that's true. Um, I think what I'm trying to say is um, there's an artistic statement there, and I think it's as successful as you can reasonably expect it to be for the amount of time and uh, energy that we were able to put into it, I guess.
Hmm. Yeah. And, you know, again with the Space Odyssey is that, like, there's not necessarily a correct way to perceive the game. And I know it sounds like a cop out thing when people are like, "Oh, it's open ended," but like, um, I mean, people who are saying that they don't get it, um, that's not necessarily true. I mean, I can't say whether or not what you thought was right or wrong, especially in a game like this. And I mean, I think the more that you reflect on the game, the more you might get out of it.
Yeah, well, I mean, what we tried to do was capture um, some of the confusion and um, just some of the darkness that goes along with growing old, especially being old enough to be put into a home, and maybe losing your sense of reality and dying. So, I mean, it's not exactly something that you can understand, especially because I think by the time you're fully experiencing it, maybe you're not so much able to understand anything at all anyway.
Yeah, no, not comprehending or really grasping that, and that is one of the major anchors of our game is death. And there's I mean, the game might have some dialogue that comes off as cheery or goofy, um, and I mean it's present, but the game has a heavier tone than that, and I don't know what really trying to say, but it's just difficult to work with at times because you can't really like put it lightly and capture the same sort of feeling that we were shooting for. It's also hard to gamify.
Well, yeah, and you need the highs and the lows because I mean, if you start a game and right from the beginning it's a total downer and it's throwing it in your face and right from the start you're just like, oh,
Mhm.
this game is a heavy-handed thing saying grandpa is dead.
Mhm.
Oh, that's no good. So we did put in um, some a little bit, some jokes and some nice things, because it's more a reflection on our fictional game, uh, his grandpa's life, and the things that happen throughout your life, and the people you meet and stuff. And then we tried to ramp up the crazy, but not trying to like. It's hard to do that without it feeling like really cliched. So you could spend like some real development time coming up just doing a rough draft of the storyline and whatnot. Like it would take longer than a month just to do that.
Mhm.
So I'm pretty happy with how that ended up. And I mean, when that heartbeat kicks in, I mean, if you're listening to this, go play the game first. I mean, it takes 10 minutes, so just do it.
Mhm.
Um, the heartbeat kicks in for the last 2 minutes, and like you're trying to find a door, and you're like, "Oh my god, I gotta get out of here. Um, I'm gonna die," and apparently I don't want to die here because the game said so.
Mhm.
Then you do die, right? And you'll always die because that's what happens. You get old and you die, right?
Mhm.
So that's what the game is about. It's about you're old, you're gonna die, and everybody's gonna die, but um, you know,
Not having
this
a
grand
good ending, not having a bad ending, and just having an ending and have, sort of the definition of the experience be everything between the beginning and the end.
yeah, that's right. So anyway, now that that's out of the way, I suppose we can talk about uh, what led us to this point. I guess we started by talking about our different game ideas and how this game idea came to dominate um, what actually happened.
Mhm.
So we had the three pre-themes, and we started brainstorming different ideas that we might be able to use if any of those three themes got picked. But then John Turp was trying to be a little bit coy and saying that, oh, he's got something up his sleeve. And I knew right away that
Mhm.
that meant that no matter what we were working on wouldn't really be usable, at least not fully. And then over a few days, I put it all together and I was like, okay, obviously the theme is either going to be just like completely different, or some kind of a inversion of one of the themes, games not for grandma, something like that. So I was just trying to say, okay, let's try and come up with a mechanic, a theme, an art style, uh, you know, different things that we can work off of um, once once the theme is there, once we know the final theme, and then we're able to hit the ground running. Because I mean, we always get a repo set up, and we've been using Unity the past few jams, so we you get a Unity project started and make sure everyone can access it and whatnot. We don't really go in and do anything though, because one, that's cheating, and two, I mean, what are you gonna do? You're gonna spend 15 minutes or something setting up a main menu or whatever. So whether you do it before the game or after the game jam starts, it doesn't really make much of a difference. I mean, a couple of weeks in, you're either working as hard as you can and every waking moment is spent on the jam, or you're burned out and you're not working on it so hard. But I mean, if you can't find 15 minutes in a month, wow, I don't know. Maybe you shouldn't be doing a jam.
Yeah. I can't imagine that I'd be able to get much done. Especially now that I I definitely have a more open feeling towards a jam now. When John said that we weren't going to be able to use the themes more or less when he made that cryptic announcement, um, it kind of put me at ease because I had taken what Tom said to basically fact at that point. Is that I could stop stressing about all these potential ideas and that we could just react to whatever happens. And that's the way that we sort of develop things. Is that we get an idea for one particular thing, and it's like, how do we make that happen? And then we figure it out. A lot of when we made Burger Game, we spent a lot of time figuring things out. We spent a lot of time figuring out what the hell Unity does, how to do it, um, what might be some good ways to do things, and like that got us pretty far in this jam. Our mastery of Unity didn't help us figure out why the character controller was almost impossible to contain in this planet, but that's a different story.
Yeah, um, that was a little bit troubling because we ran into, I'm going to call it Unity bugs. Because,
Mhm.
I mean, if you put a character controller on a collider and Unity says there's a character controller and a collider and he falls through it, you haven't done enough to the game to cause a bug, you know?
Yeah.
That's Unity's fault. If you put a character controller on top of a collider, and then you go and you're like, oh, why is this falling through? And you look on the internet and you're like, oh, try this, this, and this, and then you go and do all those things, and it still happens, and you go, well, at what point do you just say, well, that's a Unity bug, and I don't know why it's happening, but it's not my fault.
Yeah. I wish that I had just backed that out and made, because like we didn't need a whole lot of collision. We just needed like Grandpa to sort of tween around the scene like a tank. And I didn't in my mind I didn't see that originally, so I figured a character controller would get us further. And I liked being able to jump on things, so I didn't see a problem up until the part
Ironically,
where we had to get rid of
ironically,
jumping.
I had so EntranceJew was on the road. We're talking over his cell phone, and I'm like, well, this is the idea that I've come up with. We're gonna make a game where Grandpa is lost. Maybe he's lost in his own mind or whatever, but it's a maze, and we're gonna have this fog, and he's not gonna be able to see too far where he's going, and he's gonna forget where he's been, and blah 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 blah. So I'm like, okay, I'll prototype that, and when you're back in a day or two, you can clean up my code because I'm not I'm not the best programmer. I program things very linear and not general. So I'll write something that does something very specific, meant for one thing to do one time, and then EntranceJew comes along and takes that and makes it more general. But anyways, I wrote a little thing that moved the character around, and I made some example artwork or something like that. So anyways, by the time EntranceJew got back, we had a grandpa that wandered around and could do not very much. But he ripped all of that out and put in the Unity character controller, which I had no problem with at the time anyway, because it seemed like a sensible thing to do. But I guess we're not going to trust that anymore.
Yeah, no. Yeah, it seemed like the most logical thing. We have a character, we need to control him. There's a stock asset right here. It says, well, we can control this character if we just put this thing on there. And, here I was thinking, well, if it's the right tool for the right job.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of not reinventing the wheel. Like, if you write a little script or collection of scripts that do a job, I mean, keep them, use them again. If there's an asset and it like comes with Unity, hey, why not use that? And well, this is why not, because it doesn't work. So anyway, what's the next thing? Oh, the fog. The idea pivoted. It hung on the fact that we could get the fog to work the way I wanted, which in our game it uses the Unity fog, except it's centered on the player character, which means I had to write a shader to do that. And seeing as how I don't write shaders and don't know the shader language, that could have been a really, really big problem. I actually came up with a few different ways of doing it, and they were all terrible. I had one test scene where the rooms in our game are 10 Unity units by 10 Unity units, and I had a scene where I had made something like a 20 by 20 grid of like cubes, and I assigned them all different levels of transparency to make them fade out, and I was like, oh my god, why am I doing this? This is the worst possible solution to this.
Yeah.
So I yeah. Go ahead.
I remember now is that originally, because like in our original scope, we wanted to have multiple scenes with floors and walls and what. But by going by the way Tom was going about that, I realized immediately asset generation was going to be a major problem. And
Oh yeah.
even though we didn't use more walls or floors, we still ended up fixing the game so that it didn't do that.
Yeah, that was a bad idea. So I went and I looked up Unity shaders, and helpfully on I don't know, one of the Unity websites with the manual and whatnot there, there's some shader examples, and one of them was dealing with the fog. So I went in, and it's a vertex shader, so it applies fog to vertexes, and I had it working. And this was really funny because I had it working just fine until the camera changed angle or something.
What?
And then everything went all to hell. And I was like, oh no, what did I do? And long story short, I wasn't dealing in world coordinates properly. So I ended up fixing that, and it was a little bit of trouble because like I said, I'd never written shader before. And then that was kind of an ongoing thing where, because the fog depended on the shader, we couldn't use any other shaders because we used linear fog, and the fog starts at 8 and ends at 16 Unity units from the grandpa character. Well, every other shader takes that to mean that the fog starts 8 units and ends 16 units away from the camera. So almost everything would be rendered as gray, which was the fog color in the game if we use any shaders that weren't the one that I wrote, which means, okay, now we need a transparent shader. So I got to take my shader and copy and paste it and make a transparent model version of it, and then okay, now we need this and now we need that, and what we end up with, I think we we only ended up needing like 4 or 5 shaders, so it wasn't too bad. But
It didn't get as bad as it could have.
yeah, um, I think we seen that um, you know, scoping such that we would need a lot of shaders would just end poorly. So we just stuck with a standard one and then a transparent one. And then for some idiotic reason, we needed to have a couple of different ones because you can change values in a shader, but the way Unity works, you can't change. If you change one, you can either instance it only for that one mesh, or you change it on every single thing in the whole world, which either would have ended up with like 1,000 draw calls because we had so many things, or just a big mess. We had a couple of different solutions, and the best one was just to copy the shader and change the variable name inside of it so you could access that to adjust it.
Yeah, we had a couple variables separate that we were using to control things, and to get around the instance part, we just ended up using that. We still use the same like shader, but we used the global shader variable thing in order to make it so that every shader was reading from the same variable that we basically intended to pass all the other shaders, or the subset of shaders.
Yeah, yeah. When you're doing stuff in Unity, uh, sometimes Unity is very handy, and sometimes you kind of have to work around Unity, so it feels a bit like you're fighting with it. Um, it's still pretty easy to use, though, until you get into some of the more complicated things. And one of the things I enjoy is I'll be trying to make something happen, and normally it's something really simple and silly, like I'll be all, hey, I want to have this rotate. So I'll write a little bit of code and I'll be like, EntranceJew, I wrote a rotating script. Can you gussy it up and have it so you can pass events to it or whatever, integrate it into our effects system? And he'll go and look at it and he'll be like, I have never seen this function before.
Yeah, you stumped me more than once when you wrote one how the world translated around Grandpa, uh, two when you made the camera spin around Grandpa as a child of him, and and three oh geez, what else did you do that really just knocked my socks off? I think it was just how Grandpa himself rotated was confusing. I've, but it all made sense in the end. But I'd basically left those parts of the code untouched.
Yeah, but I mean, like, I go and I'd find like math.pingpong, and you'd be like, oh ho.
Yeah, that one it's handy and I've seen it before, but I just forgot. I just one of those functions is just kind of like it's a silly name. What does it do? Oh,
Yeah, yeah. No, I'm not trying to say you've never seen the math uh, ping pong ever. It's just, oh, you actually went and used it.
yeah, you found an application because I mean, math in this specific case, like how would you even figure out a use case for ping pong? It's like you don't just search. Is there a way that I could make a number act much like that of a ping pong ball and make it go left and right?
Yeah, hey, I don't know. One of the things I ended up doing is just reading the Unity documentation, because you'll see little pieces of code and examples, and you're like, oh, when they wrote that, this is what they had in mind,
That
right?
that
So,
makes the world of difference.
yeah. So anyway, what else did we do? I
Made
ended
our
up making,
generator.
yeah, yeah, we needed to place tiles in the world, and then we had to have walls show up where walls needed to be, and then we threw in anchor points to spawn the items that you see in the world, and some of the things that spawn have an anchor point on them, so there'd be a little bit of variability there because they randomly choose what to spawn. So you randomly spawn something and then randomly spawn something inside of that to get, you know, a little bit more variation in the world. And that seemed to work out well. That's kind of a handy thing to do, like when you have the NPCs and you want to have a random hair color, and or maybe they have glasses or they don't. They have a hat. What kind of hat is it? That sort of thing. So that worked out. That was handy. Once we had that, I just kind of sprinkled it all over because, you know, I love putting random things everywhere.
Yeah. And with the room placement, we actually had a different generator up front. I don't remember if you spent much time with it, Tom, but originally we had like 16 variants of the same tile with like a wall on each side. Um, and it more or less generated this kind of open continent sort of thing where the only checks that the thing did were to randomly place a tile and then check all the neighboring tiles to see what kind of like walls it should spawn. So the world was actually generating around Grandpa um, for a point in the game, and this is when we still had it in our minds that we would delete the terrain around Grandpa as he moved, or we would modify it. But the logistics of trying to manipulate the world and then having filling those gaps and have them still be valid is difficult, especially when we don't really control the distance between point A and point B. We didn't want to implement A star or anything like that to see if it was even possible to get from this destination to this other destination. It was a lot of trouble until we sort of switched to a nuclear throne style room generator.
Yeah, and it probably um, like the only semblance of actual gameplay that's in the game right now is solving a maze, which isn't too exciting until it gets down to the wire and you're trying to get out, and the escape doors actually get farther and farther away and the rooms get bigger and bigger as you go through them.
Mm-hmm.
um, Depending on a couple of things, or did we end up scrapping that?
Well, it depends on a handful of factors. Um, oh, I don't know if we want to show our hand with those, but I mean,
It's we could just say that there are factors.
yeah, they're
um,
they're there.
but you know, like you'll go through the first door and I mean it's right there, so it's easy to find. And then the doors can spawn in easy to find places, and then as the worlds get bigger and more stringier and more twistier with long hallways that go, you know, back and forth kind of sometimes, it can get to be, you know, tough to find the exit. And if you've been playing for 5 minutes, you only got 5 minutes left, and when you spend the whole time trying to find a door, um, it you know, that's the real maze feeling. um, we ended up having to put in these lines that directed you to the exits because otherwise it felt really bad because you didn't even know what you were looking for.
Yeah, you had no direction. You more or less before we had even the title screen implemented, you were just kind of dumped into a scene. We had the generator working. We had the doors spawning, I think. We had furniture, or yeah, and it would just felt empty. It's like, okay, it felt like the only thing to the game was looking at things, and until you happened across the door and maybe looked at it, it didn't feel like you were going anywhere. So I think the black lines were really effective at illustrating the a goal without mm, stating it.
Yeah, yeah. We went ahead and we didn't put in a menu this time, and we decided to just make it so that you have to you have to accept the fact that you're dead and close the program because just to make the statement stronger, right? Because it's
Right.
like you're a grandfather, so in theory, playing this game, and you need the full grandfather experience. So obviously, you don't know jack about video games. So having a nice, easy to understand thing that tells you what to do would not give you the grandfather experience because you're supposed to be confused. And then um, by the time you get to the end, you're dead, and you have to accept death and the fact that you can't just keep playing because you're dead. So you got to close the window, um, and that that adds a little bit of finality to the fact that yes, you are dead, and you've closed it now. It's gone.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the punch of the end scene, and that's something that we kind of had sight of from the beginning, which really helped shape and keep us on track with the tone of the game. Um, yeah, it really helped kind of keep it in the mind that with the game that I think even the very first thing that jumped to me is that one, I saw the style as Tom would model it. Like I saw it in my head, and what we have is, without even having to describe it, uh, exactly kind of what I envisioned, and and then the name "You Will Die Here" was one of like the very first things that even occurred to me about how this game would convey these sorts of messages.
Yeah, and to the point, the you will die here and the tone and the theme. Um, Partway through, it got a little bit antsy, um, and I felt responsible for it because not to take credit, but the game was my idea, right? So then I felt like, oh no, this is my fault. I've led us down this horrible path where there's no gameplay. And we joked about making it into like a Grandpa Doom clone or having like nurses chase you to put you back in your room and stuff like that. But adding in those kinds of game elements, those kind of staples of uh, gameplay. What do you call this? It would be like a top-down shooter or something, I suppose.
Like tropes.
Yeah. Putting that in, I think, would have ended up cheapening our main objective. Like maybe it would have ended up being slightly more fun as a video game, but it really would have missed the point.
And it's kind of, I don't, and I'm not like the kind of person that plays a lot of games that would be like considered art games. Um, it's weird to be in this position, uh, to 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 kind of accept that it's like, all right, so what we're doing is not exactly a game, and we kind of knew that from the start. But until we actually saw it come together, there was this kind of like shadow of doubt that really, really uh, loomed over us. It's like, oh, geez, why didn't we just make Pong again?
Yeah, yeah, that did happen, and it was like a black and white clear line when the sound went in, all of that doubt went away. I mean, we accomplished our goal at that point. When the sound was in, we played it and we're like, aha, yes, this is correct. This is what we aimed to do. Now, whether or not what we aimed to do was a good idea, that's up for debate. Maybe you don't like walking simulators, as some people call them, but I kind of really like artistic games. I think one of the first like walking simulators that kind of got attention was Dear Esther, and that's kind of a. I think it started off as like a Half-Life 2 mod. Then you could buy it. It was like $10 on Steam. You just wander around and you don't know what's going on, and some audio plays, and it's a little bit different each time, but there's only like a couple of different options because it's voiced and you can't like voice a whole bunch of stuff nobody's ever going to hear. But I really like that experience. It's a bit like watching like I don't know, like an art film that maybe doesn't have like a whole ton of action, and it's one of those things where like maybe the plot leaves you with more questions than answers, but that's the point of that type of thing. And I guess our game is kind of an analog for that. So it's not, it's not Mega Man, obviously.
Right.
But I think, there should be room in the world for this type of game. They'll probably never be super popular or anything. But it's probably really hard to make. It's hard to make this kind of thing and pull it off because, like, if you want to get an idea, mute your sound and play this game, and go in with the mindset that it should be a fun game, that you're having fun, and run around and don't even read anything, and you will get super bored super quick, and you will think it is a total pile of garbage.
Don't do that. Our game's perfect. Just leave the sound on.
Well, I mean, anyway.
Have you played any of the Silent Hill games?
No, I am a weirdo who does not play good popular games. I play weird games, and I only play like one game a year. So I like bad video games. I'm a bad video game person. I'm bad at video games. My opinions on what a good game is and what a bad game is, I know, are not aligned with most people's ideas on what makes a good and bad video game. I can recognize the elements that most other people would enjoy, though, and I'd like to think that I'd be able to make that. But this time around, we went the other direction, and we made the kind of thing where, like, if somebody said, "Here, play this," and they warned me, they're like, "It's not fun," I'd be like, "Okay." And I would probably spend a good amount of time wandering around and looking at things and getting the dialogue and trying to figure it out. It's a little bit spoiled for me because I entered all of the dialogue, so I've seen it.
Yeah. It's less interesting when you're staring at it on a single page.
Yeah. I suppose we could talk about the process a little bit. You mentioned the art style and the models and how it matched your vision of what the game should be.
Mm. Yeah. So back when last year, actually, a whole year ago, when we wanted to make Burger Game, there was also the idea of Florida Man that we had mentioned, and Tom did a couple art tests then of kind of peg people, like wooden doll pegs, and that's you had mentioned the art style again, when we brought it up, and that just kind of like, yeah, that makes sense. And I enjoy the juxtaposition between such a simplistic, almost childlike, um, rendering of a incredibly heavy and morose experience and kind of uh, reality.
Well, yeah, I mean um, everything in You Will Die Here is meant to look like a toy, a small, um, almost like a cross between the kind of toys that you would find in a dollhouse and like cheap knockoff Legos, you know. A lot of the models either don't have a texture, or if they do, they only really have any detail on one side because I've noticed a lot of my kids' toys. Like if you get a Lego block that happens to have printing on it,
Mm-hmm.
it'll generally only have printing on one side. Maybe it'll also have printing on the opposite side. But like all of the furniture that has the door handles or the drawers on them, they only have it on the one side. Grandpa only has um, details on his clothes on the front of him. Um, I did put details all the way around his legs, but the um, the idea is that everything is supposed to look like toys. They're not quite the wooden peg people that we had done for the Florida Man tests. They're made out of plastic in You Will Die Here.
That means a baby could potentially teeth on it, and
Or choked. You got to keep them away from babies. They're small.
there's a lot of babies in the game too. You could basically like snort one of them.
Oh, I did put a lot of babies around. I ran into a problem
A, a,
modeling here
a baby problem.
because um well, the issue was, see, I wanted to have a standard level of detail, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I made a standard cube and I tried to make everything, all the details in halves and quarters and whatnot of the standard cube. And that was working out well when I was making, a table, a chair, because it's easy for them to be recognizable. And Grandpa himself doesn't have a whole lot of detail. Like, he's got no arms. He's just a little block person with a round head and a nose and glasses. Very simple without a lot of fine detail. And then as I'm making things, I'm like, well, this already is at the minimum level of detail, or the maximum level of detail that I've allowed to put in the game, and it doesn't look like the thing I want it to look like. So like the record player has a tone arm and it's just a little rectangle. And well, like there's a certain point where if I start putting all these fine details on all little things that are laying around in the game, you're going to start to look at the things that don't have the fine details and say, well, where are the details on this stuff? Why do some things have a lot of fine detail and other things don't have a lot of fine detail? And that's a real problem when you're trying to define the art style for any video game. I mean, it's very apparent when you're doing, say, pixel art, and you say, okay, like, is this a 16 by 16 pixel, or is it 16 by 32, or is it like a 32 by 64 for our main character? You can have certain levels of detail, and then there's kind of a cutoff point where if you make something that has to have finer details than what will fit in your resolution space, you basically can't do it. Otherwise, people will come along and they'll be like, what is this collection of pixels on the screen? I don't recognize it. And these days, a lot of times people will make a retro pixel game, and they'll hit this wall, and they'll just put in something that's higher resolution, and that looks terrible. And
They get the pixel scales wrong.
yeah, or they'll like rotate a pixelated thing against a pixelated background. And that's you can't do that either because you're not respecting the pixel grid. And I'm not going to write off a game because they do that. Maybe that's an artistic choice, but I would try and avoid stuff like that myself. And anyway, like if for instance in our game here, if there was one model that had like 4 times the level of detail as everything else in the game, it would look out of place, and it would make everything else in the game look way worse than it does.
Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, in most games, this stands more for textures than it does models, but when you have, you know, such few triangles, it stands out more uh, in this game, or it would have stood out more in this game than, like, say, this wall has a lower resolution texture than all the rest. Or this one has a way high resolution texture. It must be like really freaking important that I see all these dirt speckles.
Yeah. Whenever you do come across that in a game, it stands out like a sore thumb. Um, I think this game is probably on the low end, towards the low end of the scale as far as model detail. I mean, if your main character is a cube, like you can't really get much lower than that.
Well, we have a cube and a sphere, and a sphere is difficult. It has a lot of polygons.
It has a lot of polygons, but it's a primitive, right?
Mm-hmm.
And not like as a computer thing. I mean, as your brain recognizing a thing. If you go take a child and you ask them to draw me the basic shapes, you'll get a square, triangle, and a circle. And then maybe they'll get fancier from there. But that's the main 3, right?
Right.
So cubes and spheres kind of fall out of that. You can have cubes and spheres, and even though a cube has, low poly counts and a sphere has high poly counts, that's one of the things. Spheres are a pain in the ass because they have a lot of polygons on them, in order to make them look round.
Yeah, otherwise it'd look like some sort of crystal.
Yeah. But anyway, I actually made a few assets that didn't really make an appearance in the game, like a baseball bat. The fishing pole made it in. You'll see it laying around in the fishing boat sometimes. I think there's more, but I can't remember what.
Another handheld
But
item.
anyway. Yeah, let's see. I got the cane. Maybe that's it. I don't know. Anyway, long story short, those were the small things that I could put details on, but because I kind of envisioned them as like, you get an action figure and then it has like a little molded part that goes with it, maybe a sword or something. Anything that I figured could be like injection molded and fit into the hand of a toy character, then I could put in the game. We were gonna have like some kind of a World War II scene. I want to do like a tank and some other stuff, and I thought about putting a little car in. I just couldn't figure out how to work it into the game because I don't know, the scales would be weird.
A tank. See if I, the funny thing about specifically peg people is that no matter what, the volume uh of a vehicle only needs to be about as large as the peg person.
Yeah. Like an airplane is roughly the size of a person with a couple of stubby wings on the sides and a propeller on the front and a little tail of an airplane on the back.
Or a tank would be just big enough. It would be about the same sort of scale as the boat in the game.
Yeah, yeah, you could put the person in the tank. Anyway, next time I'd want to do like more detail, but that's a scary thing because then that just means you're going to spend a lot more time doing modeling and textures. Like I got away with not putting textures on a lot of things in the game. Um, I just put a solid color on almost everything, I think.
Mm.
But so at a certain point, there's like a crossover between trying to figure out how to model something and have it recognizable at a super low resolution versus spending time making a decent model with lots of details on it.
Yeah, I'm impressed with the way that you managed to express all the geometry in the game, and like you'd mentioned, you more or less crafted things out of primitives, like the tree is a cone. I think the most complex thing might be the actual like living tree, where but it still has that sort of look and feel that it's like it's the child's prototype of a tree. Like this is something that you might get on top of a birthday cake at a grocery store or something.
Yeah, it's like the 3D model representation of a crayon drawing of a tree.
And that was really good to see. In fact, nobody misidentified in any of our playtests. They didn't misidentify anything, and I don't think anybody realized that the wheelchair is structurally impossible.
Yeah, the wheels aren't attached to nothing. It's just it's a bit like an icon, you know.
Yeah.
Um, that's that kind of design language where you have floating elements and things that don't really match up with reality, but it triggers that bit in your brain that says, "Ah, I know what that is."
Can't trick me.
Well, it goes back to like a happy face or a frowny face.
Right.
It's that, an actual smiley face does not look anything like a couple of dots and a curve. That you'll never see any human that looks like that. But everybody knows what it means, right?
Yeah.
So you kind of you gotta tap into that part of the brain when you're making art assets to be quickly identified and um, not have a whole ton of detail. Like if your game is meant to be photorealistic, well, now everything has to look real so that people can look at it and understand what it is. Um,
Yeah,
and that's what I got to say about that.
that's something that I would dread dealing with is having that. And I think like art style clashing is something that like you said it sounds like a sore thumb, but it's like it could sink a ship, and that's why with the sounds, like I was so nervous when I had to. I made you stay here with me. I would not let you put in a sound that you thought sounded bad, because I was that like wrought with like oh god and until we made sure that everything sounded just right, and I was streaming it and you were listening to me fool around with it in Audacity, and it was like, how's this, what if I put this filter on it?
Yeah, yeah. I suppose we should explain what happened. when the rules for the jam came out, one of the big sticking points for a lot of teams was the 3-man rule. And that wasn't too terrible, because normally we have, I think, 5 or 6 people, depending on how you want to count them. Apparently, people that make sounds aren't real people. But that rule, allowing the sound people is basically so that if somebody makes, some music for several games, you don't have to tie up a slot. And if you have like 5 different people doing voices, you don't have to count them against your 3-man team, because then you're never going to get voice acting, But in a way, that kind of discounts those talents. But like you and me, we don't touch sounds. And on our team was Locking Quantum, and he does the sounds. So we said, he's going to be a core member of our team, and so then we had to make a decision on what we were going to do, and so Forer is another person who's normally on our team. He didn't do Llama game because I believe he was just busy with real world stuff and probably wasn't going to do the jam anyway. But then he wanted to do something else, so he went and did I don't know what he ended up doing. Maybe he got busy again this year. But at the beginning of the jam, or before the jam even started, he was going to go work with someone else and do a different thing, and no drama over it. Just like, okay, well, there's 5 people and a 3-person team, so
you gotta cut it somewhere.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just how the talents fell, I guess, because you're a programmer, he's a programmer, I'm kind of a programmer, but I'm the one that does art. Forrest said he wanted to try and do some 3D modeling and whatnot, so he decided that was a good split. And Noemi makes music for us sometimes, and I don't even know what she did this jam, but we didn't have music from her. I don't think we even asked. But Mocking Quantum was going to do the sound, and one of the things that happened this jam that was pretty neat was everybody got a license for Wise to use for the jam, which was very nice. So we decided that was a good idea, and by that I mean Mocking Quantum decided that was a good idea because you and I had no opinions on this because we aren't sound people. So Mocking Quantum puts Wise in our game, and we didn't really have any sound. I mean, he put a footstep sound in, and then he got busy with real life, and it's not his fault, and we're not knocking him, but man, it's just like, one thing after another, and it wasn't nice stuff. Like, people were dying around him. And so he had a lot to take care of in real life, and so EntranceJew and I had to scramble and get sound in the game. So one weekend I decided that I was going to learn how to use Wise, and it took me way too long to realize that I had to install a separate program before I could even put sounds. And I managed to make some really crap special effects with some online tool that just spits out like Game Boy sounds.
Sound effects or BFXer.
Yeah, and it's not fair to say that they're crap. They did not fit the theme of our game, because I did use BFXer, and I'm not a sound person, but it is a neat tool. But for me, I just pushed random a few times and saved the things that came out. So that was a funny time for Grandpa. He was wandering around making like Mario coin sounds.
Yeah, Grandpa sounded like a Game Boy,
Yeah, they had
and
Game Boy Gramps.
that led into our next section where I promptly muted the game and never listened to it again, in hopes that Mocking Quantum would put in audio to replace what we had. And it
Well,
wasn't until.
well, hold on. Well, before you go
Oh,
any further,
okay, okay.
I'm going to stop you there because the whole reason why I had to go in and change the special effects is because I'm trying to work on the game and I've got my two young children here and the temporary sounds that EntranceJew had put in had some cursing. Um, so you open the door, and every time you open the door, I got EntranceJew yelling and swearing at me, and my children are becoming concerned. So I had to change this. So that's why I even got involved with it at all anyway. And so yeah, that's my little aside. So you carry on, EntranceJew.
So I love the sound of my own voice. So I didn't have any problems with it. But as soon as
I love the sound of your voice too.
as soon
Just
as I opened the door and I was greeted with the sound 7 times higher than anything else in the game. This just Atari beep is going boom. I was like, oh my god, my ears, and I shut it off and forgot about it. And in the exports and the betas that I was distributing and building routinely to test the generator, get people's input on what they thought of the generation, if it was interesting. All this whole time, it never occurred to me to ask, "Can you hear the footsteps sounds?" Um, and so, giving everybody a license to Wise was maybe unwise because what I found after working with Wise for so long, or rather having it present in the project and more or less ignoring its existence, was that aside from raising errors constantly, uh, its its documentation for building was definitely not what a person in my state of mind wanted to read. Very close to the deadline when I had to build the game, and I realized the game was being built wrong.
Yeah, long story short, there was no sound in our game when he built the game. It worked in the editor, but not when it was compiled or published, or whatever it is you would say that Unity does when you push "build me a game" Unity.
And it's not like I didn't flip through the documentation and say, "Oh, I gotta take it off of debug mode." I did setting it to release mode. I did getting the correct packages. I made sure everything was in line. For some reason it just was not emitting sounds outside of the editor. And it
Well, to be fair, I believe people have used Wise in their games before, and they've produced sound. So, I mean, the software does function. And I mean, I'm not a sound guy. I probably say that a million times. But when I was poking around in the Wise software, I could definitely see where it would have its use cases. I just, I don't think our game had complex enough sound requirements to make use of it.
yeah, that's kind of the camp I'm in, and I'm not necessarily a stalwart. I love cool shit, but from where I'm standing is that if all we need to do is like bend the pitch of something or randomize a sample or anything that's exposed within the Unity like sound API, I can just, put together a throwaway script that does one particular thing or another particular thing. I wrote a handful of them last time, but we never ended up using them this time because we just kind of hooked them up directly where the sound calls would be. And that's fine for me. And I understand Wise is good, but I just couldn't couldn't figure out how to build the damn thing. And a lot of the documents were referencing things that were removed in Unity 5 and were only in Unity 4, and I was very scared and concerned when I read those things.
Yeah, that's troubling. Um, so I guess the point of this branch of conversation is that mocking quantum wasn't around to save us, and we had to rip Wise out because that was easier than trying to figure out why it wasn't working for us. And then we had to do sound design and sound engineering and sound production and sound integration and all of those things that you do with audio, and get them into the game without too much help from Mocking Quantum because he was busy. And I mean, like, he was legitimately busy. He didn't flake on us or anything like that. He did get a buddy of his to make us music, and very big thanks to that guy.
Troy? Yeah.
Troy, because the music is perfect. It made the game. It totally changes the tone to have that music. And he sent over like a 1 minute sample, and I was like, oh gee, I don't know. And Mocking Quantum said, this is just to get some feedback. And I'm like, oh, well then can you do this and this? And the very next thing we got back from him was perfect. It was amazing.
Yeah, it sounded a little bit more fairy tale when we got the sample. But then when we got, well, what we had now, it had just the right elements of sinister that we were looking for. And I mean, maybe not sinister, but you know, it was dark, but not like too dark.
Yeah, yeah, it definitely changed the tone because the other music, the sample music, was happy. It had a happy kind of overtone, undertone. I don't even know. I'm not good with musical language.
You'd
Um,
originally described it as upbeat, and that wouldn't be wrong.
yeah, yeah. It it would have clashed, I think, or at least given you the wrong idea. This was good. So then, EntranceJew and I, we went on the internet, as one does, and we found some sounds that we could take and chop up and push sliders or something. I don't know. And we I was super surprised that we were able to make the game sound as good as it does. And I mean, there's only like what 5 or 6 sounds in the game.
Yeah,
It's ridiculous. But, well, oh, other than all the grandpa sounds.
of which how many samples there are remains a mystery and an
Yeah, I don't even
exercise for
know.
the viewer.
Yeah. Um, a fun fact: one of the sounds, I don't even remember which one it is now. Which sound was it, EntranceJew, that I made by opening a Photoshop file in Audacity as a raw audio file and then pushing buttons?
That is the noise that happens before the door opens. I had described to you that I needed a large suspenseful build-up, but I had no idea where I would even begin. Like, you know, some sort of sample to start doctoring off of. And Tom here goes, I got just the thing. Don't you worry. And I'm like, what could you possibly have?
Apparently, what I had was sound clay in the form of a Photoshop file to open as raw data and mold that with my oh so experienced hands by pushing buttons in Audacity. And I don't even know how that worked out, but it did. It's amazing.
Yeah. I don't think I played. I don't know what you did to it, but all I remember doing was giving it maybe more reverb, canceling some noise and equalizing it a little bit.
Yeah, let's see. Um, I did a lot of shifting its pitch and shifting its speed and that sort of thing, and I gave it a couple of different fade-ins, and I echoed it and reverbed it, and just the standard. Oh, maybe I'll try one of these and one of them. And again, not a sound person in more sense than one. And we pulled it off. We really did it. It's amazing.
The kid in the candy store approached the sound filters. It's like the person first discovers the flanger for the first time.
Hey,
Wow,
man,
wow, wow.
it's like when you got like a 6-year-old and you go bowling and they throw a strike and it's the first time they've touched a bowling ball. It's none of that was skill. None of it. Somebody instructed them, roll this ball at those pins and knock them all down. They had no agency over whether or not the ball did it. They, the fact that the ball made it to the end is a miracle.
Yeah.
And that's how sound design works, apparently.
Oh.
Anyways, what I'm trying to say is I don't think I could pull that off again.
I do have a background in audio tomfoolery. I edit audio for Let's Plays and do some voice acting, not a whole lot, but the whole takeaway from that is that I still don't necessarily know how to do a sound that I want, but I was able to eloquate an idea and get a starting point. Like, I wanted the death to be impactful, and I needed something that like sounded really striking but dry. And I'm like, what could there be? And Tom was like, gong, and I'm like, no, gongs are too heavy, they're too metallic, they blah 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 blah. And I'm like, I need something almost hollow. And then I'm like, oh yeah, those like Japanese deer scarers, they have the perfect doink noise. And then I just played with that and bounced it up, and it has that perfect amount of finality to it with the echo and all that I'm really really glad I got out of it.
Yeah, I definitely agree that was the correct sound to use. So that must be a talent, to know which sound to pick. A little bit like knowing which color to make something, So anyway, the game came together at like the very final hour, which was weird because I spent like maybe a week not slacking off, but not being as active. Because I ran out of easy stuff that I could model, and at that point we were struggling just to have all the text lines for the things that were even in the game. So I thought that if I went ahead and modeled a whole pile of stuff, that just would have made the problem worse. So I kind of put the brakes on that, and I was trying to do some other things. And I mean, it's summertime. I got the kids here with me, and they were getting anxious to do some different things. So I spent more time not working on the jam for about a week. So I was still around, but and then came like the last couple of days, and the game wouldn't build, and we didn't have any sounds, and everything was horrible, and I was super. I wasn't happy with the way things were right then, because I couldn't see how we would get from where we were to where we ended up. And I've said this already, but the sounds, they brought it all together. That makes all the difference in the world, is to have really good sound design. And I mean, we're not good sound designers, and we pulled it off. So I mean, uh, if we had really, really good sound design, we'd have a AAA game on our hands.
Yeah, the best laid plans of mice and men. My during your down cycles was also mine. I was tied up at work with Mr. Bones' Wild Ride, and there was just like no energy left in me at the end of the day. I would, during jams, there's sort of like level of commitment, not just to myself as like, oh, I don't want to end up on the wall of shame. I personally don't care if I end up on the wall of shame. But now that I'm in this with my team, with Tom, it's this liability to my team and loyalty to a team, for that matter, is that I just can't. I feel bad when I'm not making game happen, and I have like conscious waking hours in my brain where I feel I could be making game happen. And it sometimes would be that I'd sit here up until like 8 or 9 or 10, and I would spend an hour doing what high performance EntranceJew would do in maybe 5 minutes, just because I wanted to get that little notch done. And when I wasn't doing that, I felt guilty.
Yeah, um, I feel the same way. Um, if I was left to my own devices, I'd never finish anything ever. But like you say, working on a team causes you to not want to let people down. And we didn't get into any of those like really bad spirals where you like don't even you don't even acknowledge the IRC for a week because you're just sick of it and or whatever, you know.
That
Uh,
I'm known for.
well, it happens. It happens. But people have lives too, and I mean the game jam is supposed to be for fun. And on that note, I had fun. There was a little bit of drama with the rules before the game jam started, not from inside our team, but reading what other people were posting. I think some people weren't happy with the person limit. Um, people, I got the idea that people weren't happy with the general uh, feel of the jam. Like it's not fun anymore. Oh, you're not making it for fun. You're too. I don't know. I don't know what they were trying to say, but they had complaints about it, and you know that's really not fair. A lot of that because John Turp and the other people, the judges that work on this, and remind me who does the website.
Sharp and spoon.
Yeah. See, I knew it was Sharp and Spoon, but I know way too many people on the internet that's got spoons, and I can never be 100% sure if I've got the right one. But yeah, they do a great job keeping everything together, and I think the level of organization has been going up, and with that, um, you have to follow the rules because if you're trying to organize things, if people don't go into their proper buckets, then you've got a mess. And one of the other things that happened, and I think either last year or in the summer especially, is just the level of prizes and this need to win as driven things to the point where it's like they got to have like a legal team and stuff now. It's
Yeah,
you know,
I think last time I gave them so much money that they brought a lawyer this time just so that they can be sure that they're giving it away accordingly.
well, I mean, you cross a line at a certain point where you're not small potatoes anymore. When you've got companies handing out licenses and stuff as prizes, that's all good though. The problem is it can bring out the bad side of people where they see winning as the end goal. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I've said this publicly before, but one of the things is, in my mind, I would rather we completely fail to make a game, but each learn from the experience. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like I learned. I'm not an expert now or anything, but I learned how to write some shaders. So I'm more comfortable next time to go in and tweak the code in a shader. Uh, you learned
Never
more
trust
about
capsule colliders.
rotations. I was gonna say
Oh yeah.
you learned how to turn things in Unity.
3D spatial math is my bane, and I approach things in the most childlike way because it's just like a mental hurdle.
Well, the point is, um, we learned something, and I kind of feel bad for Mocking Quantum because he had an opportunity to learn Wise, which he wanted to do, is to get better at Wise, and having a license for a month would have been a real nice thing, but um, like I said, he had other things he had to take care of.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but what I'm trying to say is learning and having fun is what Game Jam is about, and I'm happy with what we managed to learn this time and to grow as a team. I think we were pretty efficient this time. We didn't have a lot of back and forth, and we didn't have any of those times where I was waiting on you or you were waiting on me. Um, we didn't have to have a whole lot of meetings where we open the dock and be like, okay, come on, this is what we got to be doing here.
No, we were mostly autonomous aside from the times where we'd have to bug. Not that we needed something from the other person, but we needed them to show signs of life so that we know that we're still working.
Yeah.
but
Um,
but we
oh,
got everything in line. We opened out with a strong kind of idea where we wanted to end up. Um, we presented what we had often, and every time we had something, we told whoever was around to check it out at their earliest convenience. And we even with any sort of delay, we handed things off as was necessary, and we voiced any concerns for where something or another was going. We only had like a couple times where we actually had to like talk and consider whether our game was going the direction that we think it is. And what happens every jam is we end up like taking out the axe and saying, "Hey, look at those features that we aren't gonna deliver." Chop.
yeah. What's funny is, one of the constants of Game Jam is to not overscope. They can't say, do not overscope your game often enough. And, that's a pretty good rule to follow. And um, I think we've managed to uh, aim low. And I think we do that by putting in these ideas that would be so pie in the sky that they just never happen. So it's almost like right from the start, you just, like, unless a miracle happens, this is not getting into the game anyway, so nobody even worries about it.
Well, I think I don't know if it's luck or skill at this point that all of our ideas that we manage to have are so collapsible that nothing suffers from what you don't know is getting cut. It's all just would be nice and not uh fortunately in this case not, oh, the audio's gone, so the game has no atmosphere. No time for that. Like.
Yeah, yeah. Like, we had to cut full voiceovers for everything, but we had some sound, and through, I don't know, like we must have had an angel smiling on us to get sound into the game, when, because we literally stayed up all night. At least EntranceJew stayed up all night. I stayed up as late as I could because I'm an early person. I'm not a late at night person. I was falling asleep at my computer as moral support for EntranceJew while he was working on the sound, like the day before we had to submit. And then the next day I get up and I'm like, oh no, there's no commit from EntranceJew, and it looks like he went to bed an hour ago at 5 o'clock in the morning, and it's 6 o'clock in the morning. I should make some coffee. And then I hop on the voice channel here where EntranceJew hangs out. One of his buddies was around, and I'm like, hey, where's EntranceJew? And he's like, he went to bed, and I'm going to work. And I'm like, righto, I'm gonna go make some coffee. And I was like a zombie because I was up late, and I'm just like, okay, I'm gonna go make some coffee. And I'm like, wait a minute, EntranceJew's probably sleeping. I could be sleeping. So I went back to bed. And then I got up later on after sleeping in on the Sunday, and you were full of fire. Oh my God, I couldn't believe it. I'm like drinking an entire pot of coffee, trying to wake myself up to enough to get my eyes to point the same direction and be able to read what's on the screen. And you're finding bugs and fixing things, and I'm playtesting and saying, oh, I fell through the world again. And you're like, oh, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And then I'm like, oh my God, who cares, EntranceJew? Just submit the game. Oh my God, I want this to be over. And you're like, nope, there's another bug. Oh, I'm going to fix this. Oh, I'm going to fix that. And I'm like, oh, gee whiz. Where are you finding all these bugs? When did you have time to program these bugs?
That's what I wanted to know. Is like, for the most part, that day was full of fixing things that never appeared once until that particular day. Stuff
Yeah.
I can't even put into words. It was just stuff that happening that made no sense and never occurred ever before. It's not like lack of playtesting. We tested it on Hammy's toaster. We tested it on Danny and Ethan and anybody in IRC on across any platforms that they had. They'd never experienced the issues that I experienced on my own computer on that day.
And like John Terp has been hammering playtest, and I kind of took that to heart, and I was honestly playtesting the game a lot through the whole month. As soon as it was playable at all, while I was thinking, or just to take a break from modeling or something, I would run through the game. And every now and again, like I'd pop into the IRC and I'd be like, EntranceJew, I fell through the world, or oh, the flippin' shadows in Unity aren't working properly now. What the hell did you do? Why'd you touch my shadows, EntranceJew, you bastard?
I stole them.
Yeah, obviously he didn't even touch them. I do. I tend to the look of the game. I don't stop anyone else from getting their fingers in there. I don't think EntranceJew really had. No, that's not true. EntranceJew, you did the end scene pretty much all by yourself. I don't think I even touched that scene, and you did a great job there. And I made all of the art assets, but you handled all of the wipes or the fog changing. I think I made an example or something of how you change the fog, and then you took that and you made that into a system that you could actually use, and implemented a lot of Uh, just the visual things that happened in the game. Um, but generally, the lighting and the colors and whatnot, that all falls to me. And you do all the game code that has to do with I guess whatever would be one step up from the engine, the game logic.
The part that makes what we want to have happen. Between like, well, we have two types of things in the game. Um, we have traditional like systems and components, as would Unity dictates. But we also have Grandpa, and he's quite a wild beast because of the way that we intended for things to work, the way that things ended up working, and so much vestigial code that, after a certain point, you don't feel comfortable removing. So you instead just start adding to, which I don't, and when I say it like that, it sounds stupid, but it made sense at the time. And,
Well, it's a game jam. You gotta change your operating procedures when you're doing a game jam because best practices and what will get the game done in under a month are two different things.
yeah, yeah, and I mean, like, I practiced scrutiny with game jam. I ended up refactoring stuff like the day of the submission, but I mean, I cut my losses and I know what we can afford and what we can't. Um, and in all that, I actually programmed this time to cope with the mystery bugs that we would occasionally get. A logging system that paid very close attention to the kinds of details that the game was recording, um, in addition to just all sorts of general logging error messages and all that, and it automatically posted those to my server with a link to another service that uh, had the full text log. So my server doesn't have the logs. Nobody has the logs, and only the people who played the betas ever had their information logged. But it was very sophisticated, I think, for a stupid little system. I liked it anyhow.
Yeah, yeah. No, that was a big help to figure things out. I mean, I didn't have to deal with it much other than saying, EntranceJew, I broke the game again. Come and fix the game. But
Yeah, when,
uh,
when
we could talk about some of that leftover code that you mentioned there. Because Grandpa had a full range of needs and emotions um, that I believe were going to be driven by the types of things you spent time with in the game, what you were looking at, and how long you looked at them, and how often you experienced things was all going to tally up. And it would have changed the ending to have like we were going to have like people around you and different types of people around you, different numbers of people or something to be like, oh, Gramps was a real bastard and I hated him, or oh, I really loved how he was such a generous person, or this or that, and to give kind of a different experience after, um, at the ending of the game. But that had to get cut, I think, for two reasons. One, we would have had to populate all of the items in the game with those needs and emotions, and two, that's a hard system to nail down. It's you know it's an easy thing to say, oh, you should just do this, and then it's like, okay, yeah, smart guy, how do you do that? And make it actually make sense.
hmm Yeah, for anybody who's ever played Silent Hill Shattered Memories, the game runs. I mean, in addition to um, psychology tests that Kaufman runs on you, the game does inventory of the kinds of decisions that you make, the kinds of things that you look at, and unintentionally, those ended up surfacing in this game, or maybe not so. And a lot of people criticized the game that it gave very Zodiac kind of style readings to your character. It's like really didn't. It put you in a lot of like flat situations at the end, and they felt unsatisfying. And when you have that sort of thing, it bothered me that like I set out to do something. I set out to have that, and when I had all these numbers, and when I had all these like logs, and I had all the things that there were in the game, and I was trying to make decisions based on what was the most plausible sort of effect that one thing could have, and I'm looking at everything, and I'm like, I can't get any meaningful data without adding more metadata. And I had abstraction after abstraction. I had Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I had this wheel of emotion that kind of like countered other things, and it's all there, but not as much of it gets used as I would have liked, and not in the ways that I wanted them to have the effect. I don't know if I'll necessarily be able to revisit it anytime soon, but it's one of those things where I just didn't want to deliver like a Mass Effect 3, oh, here's your ending deal. I didn't want that to be the takeaway. And that's unfortunately why I ended up axing it instead of trying to save it or repurpose it um, for anything more than what it was already used for at that point.
Yeah. Well, I mean, sometimes big ideas don't work out as good. Game, they not necessarily translate from paper to project.
Yeah, and one of the key differences between Silent Hill Shattered Memories application is that it would put you. I mean, I already mentioned, but like it would put you in very obvious situations where it's like, do you want to go look at the sexy lingerie and be a pervert, or you want to go to the bar, you alcoholic? And it's like stapled on to this trope, and it's not like actually being defined by your character. But in the game, it felt good because there was so much content and so much stuff in between, and the stuff it changed was so minor that you'd never really even know that wasn't just how it was supposed to be unless you played it again. And that moment was what kind of drove me to want to have that sort of thing. But like I said, it got the got the axe.
Well, branching in games is hard, and it's hard to make it feel good. And one of the big problems when you're making a video game, you can't spend the whole time working on content that people aren't going to see.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't go around making like all these branches that aren't likely to have players go down them and have all the story and everything else when nobody's actually going to see any of that. And I mean, half the time, a player isn't going to read things the same way as the game designer does anyway. I remember I was playing the original Witcher game, and you end up with this kid, and there's two ladies, and you can give the kid to one lady or the other lady, and it's a decision in the game. And the whole game is full of decisions. And the one of the big things in that game is none of them are black and white. They're all kind of a gray area. There's not like a right and wrong. So it's like, oh, which lady do you think you should give this kid to? So I pick one, and then the game's all like, oh, you love this lady. And I'm like, what?
Mm-hmm.
I don't love the lady. I thought she'd be better at looking after the kid. I don't know where this story's going. And then you say it out loud, and you're like, "Oh, you gave the lady a kid, ha ha ha! I get it now. It's you're." But yeah, that's not how I took it when I was making the decision.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So things like that can feel bad to a player if if they're not in the same mindset as the person who made the content was when they were writing it.
Right. And not to say that you should never take risks and have this absolutely rounded and safe experience of a game, but when there's such a high chance of something going wrong, you either have to spend a disproportionate amount of time to correct that, and or the other side of the coin is what is becoming popular in games is the dispassionate RNG. It just crafts and melts all these situations together without a whole lot of regard for what the player's choice actually was. And so you end up with these like prefabricated situations, and you can, after going through enough of them, you start to see the individual like components that come together to form what you're looking at, and it's like the whole sort of thing falls apart. And like I said, you have to spend a whole lot more time to correct that. And I'd rather just ultimately drop something that is not only do I not want the player to feel like bad, but I never want something to be such a punch in the face. Like nothing takes me out of a game more than a misrepresentation of the character that I've been playing as.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, sometimes people kick around like a game is so linear, and they say that as like a bad thing. Oh, the game is a straight line, A to B, linear. That's bad. But not necessarily, because I mean, anybody who's old enough to have played the original Half-Life, that game is as on rails as you can get, and like that's a really good game. That's one of those breakout games that before that, something like a first-person shooter wouldn't even have a story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Maybe a little bit of window dressing or something, but nothing compelling.
I mean, at the time, everything what people like to say was that uh, FPS games were sprawling maps with tons of secrets, and yeah, sure, but uh, to make a game come together and deliver a linear experience like that when so many people were used to arcadey sort of like high action games, and to deliver a linear experience with that was was really impressive. But I mean, I'm the last person that you need to ask and say, is Half Life great? Well, duh.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm the correct age to Half-Life was the thing when I was younger. So yeah, um, Half-Life was a really good game. Um, anyway, there's two sides to every coin, and making games is a lot of trade-offs. And sometimes, you have like a triangle. You can have this, or this. Pick two, but mostly it's pick one.
One and a half.
Yeah, or it's like there's like 8 different things you want to have, and you can have one or two if you're lucky.
Yeah, I guess one of the things that I'm still grateful for is that we've never managed to spread ourselves so thin that we failed to deliver uh, a complete experience. I feel like Burger Game in its entirety, although it kind of very evidently shows that it's one of our first projects. And Llama Game, it's compared to Llama Game, it's just as complete, but Llama Game is a better experience, I think. And just like this one, it's a complete experience. There's not anything missing. Everything's there. It doesn't feel like it's trying to go too far in one direction and failing. It just, if it fails, then it just fails entirely, and I'm fine with that.
Yeah, yeah. It's one thing to aim at a target and miss, and it's another thing to aim at a target and hit it. It's just you aimed at the wrong target. But again, I don't think we're in the game jams to win, so we're not pandering. We're not trying to one up everyone and say, "Oh, we got to make a way better a way better game than everyone else, and we have to go way over the top." And we tend to like to put gimmicks in our games. So in Burger Game, during the stream, John Term didn't notice that if you threw the food on the ground, then you got rats, and you could pick the rats up off the floor and put them in the food. That was our little surprise there. And it was a little disappointing to see that missed. But Burger Game, there was a lot to it that we knew about because we made the game, but it wasn't really evident in the game unless you gave it a lot more time than most people would really think it was worth. And then we really wanted to make a splash with the Llama Game, so we made the game, and the theme there was chill. So the breakout portions, was really chill. We made it so you couldn't lose, and then we had like this kind of overworld where you could just kind of bounce around just to get to the next level. So we threw in that bird, and I'll let you talk about the bird.
Oh, the Hellbird. I stayed up all night. I don't know what occurred in my brain, but I was thinking, huh, this game's gonna be on a stream. What if I made something funny happen while it was on the stream? And so I stayed up all night, with energy drinks and such, and I made what I wanted to have happen. And then the Hellbird was born, and I think it was largely inspirational because people still talk about it here and again. They might not even recognize that it was our game that did it, but that's fine. I'm glad that in some way that moment was so memorable to everybody that's what stuck, and that was the point of doing it in the first place. Is just to make everyone happy and to have fun with it.
Yeah, and it really, really was fun, and I think it made everyone happy. I haven't in a while, but every now and again I'll go back and I'll watch that part of the stream when that bird first appears, and they're like, "Tom, you bastard!" He's probably at home laughing his ass off at the TV watching the stream, and I'm like, "Yep, that's exactly right." And that felt really good because that was a fun, chill game and a chill jam, and it really fit to throw a total curveball. Just have something ridiculous in there, and I don't even think we got extra points for that because none of the judges seen it. It was only on the Gong Show, because that feature only works if you're John Turp and you have people in the stream. And we probably could have made that more general, but it was. I don't think it was a last minute thing, but it was, we'll put this in and then we'll move on. And we didn't really think about it afterwards. But now we have a little bit of a name for ourselves. I mean, we only did it the one time, really. But people probably come to expect a certain amount of silliness and maybe some surprises from us. And, you know, to your credit, EntranceJew, you did have more ideas on what we could do with the grandpa game here. And I put my foot down and said, no.
To a child.
Yeah, I said no to my children. No, the fact that we needed a little bit more seriousness to pull off the tone for this game, we had to put aside gimmicks and surprises and just play it straight this time. So, sorry to disappoint, but we didn't put any. Yeah, no, we have no tricks up our sleeves. Sorry, you know. But yeah, if you've listened to this, I'm sorry that you've listened to this. What are you even doing?
Well, it wasn't just the gimmicks. I mean, I obviously had no problem abstaining, and even with the voicing, all the lines was just something that I wanted to do for fun, not necessarily. Actually, for this part, I didn't even like the prospect of having my own voice, but for some reason, I felt like it had to be there just so that there was more substance. And it was one of those things that just had to go. Like as soon as we had the sound in and we felt the theme of the game come together, it was just, you know, without saying, it's like, all right, we can't put more audio into the scene. We have the just perfect amount of everything that we need. We would be tipping the scales if we change the tone further by adding a voice.
Yeah, and not just that. I mean, we've probably forgotten now the different things we could have integrated, but yeah, we didn't want to upset the tone.
And a lot of decisions actually came down to that, is whether or not, yeah, with almost everything that came up, the first question was whether or not something will fit with what we have managed to deliver and what we wanted to deliver.
Yes.
And whether or not it's DiGiorno. They don't have that in Canada, do
they? The pizza?
Yes.
That's Delicio. I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about anymore.
I don't know. I had fun this jam. I felt like it was a challenge. I don't. I feel like any passerby might see the game and not think a whole lot of it, but in a lot of ways, the game, in its simplicity, was an exercise in restraint. It's easy to shove a lot of shit into a game, and I'm not tooting my own horn here, but you know, once you have it all there, you have to tie it together, and that's why we make all these decisions to cut stuff. Is that, you know, if it just doesn't mesh, then it's gonna be a really bad experience to play.
Yeah, and we did have fun making this game. We had fun. We learned certain things. It was a challenge, and I'm glad that you know, we met the challenge the way we did and showed restraint and tried to make a polished experience with the without upsetting the tone and making a game for a metaphorical grandpa. Um, both of my grandfathers are passed away now for a number of years, and just making something not too heavy, but not mocking. You know,
Mm-hmm.
making something that is a little bit more serious. Um, well, for me, associating a grandfather's um, with death, as both of mine are dead. But we could have went the other way because my dad is still alive, and he is a grandfather because I have children, and they have a lot of fun. The kids love hanging out with him and seeing the way they interact and they play games together and stuff. That's really good. So you can go the other way too and make a game about a grandparent where things are fun and happy and everybody's having a good time. We chose not to do that.
What idiots we were.
Yeah, maybe we should have made a fun game. And again, I want to apologize for sending us down this terrible path. Do not make procedural generation and make sure your game mechanics are the first things you figure out. And we did the opposite of that, and that was silly.
Yeah, that was the first thing I said. Is that okay, Tom? No matter what happens when we open up this brainstorming session, we have to come out of it with a mechanic, and I'm not doing procedural generation. And then about a week later, or something or another, I'm on the phone, I get a call, or I'm talking with Tom here on my phone, and he sells me the idea of procedural generation. Curse you. But not really.
What happened? My Discord disconnected or something.
Oh, don't worry. I was just telling everybody about how you sold me some snake oil in the form of procedural generation right after I said, no matter what, we're not doing it.
Well, even when we were brainstorming like way back at like the first, it was like, hey, there's a jam coming up. EntranceJew, you want to do the jam? It's like, yeah. And we're kicking around some ideas like super informal, and I start joking. I'm like, haha, let's do a procedural generation, not. And then that's what we end up doing. But to be fair, in my mind's eye, the original plan was to only procedurally generate a very small area around the grandfather, which turns out to be more of a problem than what we actually ended up doing. Now, if we had of thrown our resources behind it, we could have figured that one out. But I don't know if it would have been better for it.
I don't think it would. Honestly, the problem the with doing things that way, it cap when we had the implementation in place, it captured the exact essence of what we wanted out of it. But the problem that we encountered was that that was not compatible with everything else. So we had to get rid of it anyway because you felt lost and you never like I could see like how far the player drifted away from the center of the world and how far they ran off in one direction or even how little somebody might actually move from the origin and just kind of navigate the same sort of hallway. But if the player never had the ability to step back and see that, then they wouldn't ever have the opportunity to appreciate it. And what we had with Burger Game was this black box of a judgment of a burger scoring algorithm, and what a lot of players found, or what I found from a lot of players, is that they don't like stuff that they don't understand. And what they definitely don't like is the rules of the game changing right out from underneath them, or just feeling hopelessly lost.
Yeah, that is a bad feeling, and that's one of those things that just doesn't translate into a game. Is um, the idea of someone having such a bad time that they don't even know what's going on. I mean, now you're just making a player feel so bad that they don't even know what's going on. That's not good to do to somebody.
Hmm. So at least we managed to have direction by the end of it, and that's almost more important uh, in terms of gameplay than anything else that we could have implemented. Is simply
That's
having
true.
direction.
Other than hallway monsters and some projectile weapons, and turn the grandpa maze into a maze of death where he's doing the killing. Because that's a fun thing to do. Everybody loves games where you run around killing things.
Let's make a version of Grandpa game where instead of looking at things, Grandpa is constantly firing lasers out of his eyes and he's destroying everything, but he doesn't mean to. He just keeps looking at things on accident and destroying them.
Okay.
That's like Cyclops' story from X-Men, right? Said one day he woke up and his eyes wouldn't stop shooting lasers.
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty crap thing to wake up to.
And I thought I had it bad when I got a call at 8 o'clock and the servers were down.
Yeah. All right, so what else do we got to cover?
Well, we talked ourselves in circles about the beginning and end. Um, we talked about the tone and how well the music put things together. We talked about how important it was to follow through with what we set out to do, otherwise, we would have accomplished nothing. And we just kind of went over the general difficulties we faced during the jam. What I don't know if we really touched on much other than the stuff that we'd already complained about. What did we learn this time?
Well, we certainly learned not what not to do. Um, we should definitely stick to our guns next time and come up with a mechanic before we start. And one of the points that we made before we even started was to have the theme inform the game mechanic. And that's a good way to tie the game to the jam through the theme. Um, so I think we kind of did that here, but I feel that as a game, it's a weak mechanic to be wandering around as a grandpa. It's not very compelling gameplay. You can't really blame the theme because other people made some really fun games,
Mm-hmm.
but we just didn't. We didn't go down that path where things were fun, and it is what it is.
And I mean, that's not necessarily like wrong in any way. I would love to see more games like that. I think it was during the Little Jam there was a game about a robot on the moon, and that one was good.
Yeah, yeah.
When it's right, I don't think it got. I don't think it won, but it really stood out. And I just appreciate seeing risks being taken. If I and I say that after having made a fucking breakout clone, but I like to see the envelope being pushed, and but that's not. There's nothing inherently better about that than making a game that's mechanically sound and traditionally fun. So I mean, there's no right or wrong.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, what are you gonna? Well, one of the things that I said is, you know, we can't make Mario.
Mm-hmm.
Mario's a fun game. It's already been done. You can't just make Mario, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have to you have to come up with mechanics, and one of the good places to look for mechanics are the really old arcade games. Um, they've all been done to death, but part of the reason why the ones that people remember stick around is because they're genuinely fun. And those old arcade machines, and I'm talking like Missile Command and Asteroids and those sorts of games. It's not the graphics, it's the game mechanic that is the draw to those games, and those are good things to look at when you're trying to design something for a jam. And you can take those and juice them up, and you can add in some more modern game mechanics and kind of mix and match and come up with a little bit of a new concept, and try and refine that into a fun new game. Um, but we didn't do that this time.
Here's our advice. Do things that are fun and good, and don't do things that we did.
Well, we have almost a handbook at this point of our game design documents. We write out like, oh, do this, do this, do this, don't do that, and don't do that. And then we turn around and we didn't do any of the do's, and we did all the don'ts.
Yeah.
I guess it's a proof of concept. It was our our instincts, were they leading us the correct direction? And I think the answer is yes. We should have listened to ourselves and followed our own advice. But having said that, we ended up making what we set out to make, and um, I don't expect to win any game jams with You Will Die Here, but I hope that people at least think about, uh, you know, the things when they play the game a little bit.
Yeah, and um, one way. Uh, I started off on that. What was it say? You said, having said that, what would you say immediately before that?
You're asking me to remember something now? Holy, uh, I don't know. I was just talking about how we we have our little rules and we didn't follow them, and then
Right. Um, Now, with all that in mind, we did challenge ourselves, and despite despite whatever anyone thinks of the game, we did something that was difficult for us. And even though we didn't deliver a good, traditional game, what we did was we did something that was difficult for us, something that we didn't maybe even think that we could get done for a while, and we
oh
did
yeah.
it. And I think, like what you said, part of it's to learn and have fun. And what we definitely did was uh, experience a lot of growing pains with our game making muscles here. I feel like I'm ripped right now. all the stuff I learned.
Oh yeah, and I tell you one thing, um, the as soon as the game jam was submitted, I was like, oh, I'm gonna sleep for a week. And then I things were flowing so good. After like one night's sleep, I got up and I made a whole bunch of progress with some of the other projects, like the 3D horse world that I'm working on and everything. That's grown leaps and bounds. Just because of getting in the right the right mindset of just overcoming what you don't know how to do and then learning and doing it.
And the momentum can be really powerful. And that's kind of why I was even able to make it through some of the first few weeks of the jam, was that I was faced with a problem so difficult for me to see a way out of, that I, instead of trying to compromise with myself, and not deliver what we thought would be good, we or I had that sort of mountain to climb, and it felt good once I got to the top, and I got to say, all right, I did it, it's there, now what? And then we just started throwing more stuff in and more stuff in, and despite any panics or lulls, we had that forward momentum, even if it slowed or sped up.
Yeah, and that goes back to saying like what I say like you can't make Mario. I'm talking about Mario Brothers 1, which is your classic platformer, and I don't want to belittle people's accomplishments, but anybody who gets into making games, you could make a platformer if you really sat down and tried. You could make Mario 1, you could make the first level. You could do that, and it would be really fun because Mario is a fun game. But once you're accomplished at say working in a game engine and programming enough game logic to build that functionally, you you aren't challenging yourself design wise and creatively to just build another platformer. Not to put down platformers, but so many jams could just be like you could make a Mario game, and instead of having a Mario, you could have had a grandpa, and instead of coins, he could have been collecting. I don't know. Actually, coins would be pretty good because grandpas love collecting change. Or
Dentures.
just well, it's that thing. It's window dressing, right? The
Mm-hmm.
theme is informing how things look, not how things play. Because grandpas are not known for hopping around and smashing bricks with their heads. I don't know. Mine weren't anyway.
Mine might have.
Well, you understand my point. Is
Right.
we challenged ourselves to design a game in a space that hasn't been explored to the point where you can just basically open a book and say, this is a Mario game, and then implement that. We didn't go make Pong or Breakout, and we didn't go make um, like a top-down shooter or any of the game staples where you can just be like, oh, you know what? This is a Flappy Bird clone.
Mm-hmm. And I'm glad about that. I like that. Um, no matter what, I can say that everybody who was handed the game understood it so far as how to navigate it, how to play it. what they were meant to do, um, and I mean, it's we didn't necessarily have as much going on as we did in Burger Game, but um, despite that, not despite, but to our compliment, we also kind of kept that same reservation of HUD space and not informing the player and letting them learn naturally, or putting them in situations to learn. And there wasn't a whole lot of learning in this game, but there was just enough that uh, everybody who's played it has come out understanding it, at least mechanically.
Yeah, and that's important. That's a strong skill to have if you're going to be designing games, is to think about someone coming in with, never having seen your game before and picking up the game and understanding what to do by reading what's on the screen. And I don't mean the text that's on the screen, I mean visually looking at the game elements and saying, aha, I think I'm supposed to do this, being able to test their theory and then continuing on with the game.
Mm.
So yeah, that's one of the skills that maybe we haven't learned this time because we've been trying to keep our HUDs clean, and but we've still progressed and learned more, got better at it, and next time we do a game jam, I think we should probably clone a game that is fun and everybody likes to play.
Like
And
Mario Party.
yeah, we'll make Smash Brothers. We'll do something that is more traditional and fun, and we'll get all the points and win the jam.
Because that's what's important in life.
Yeah, winning is the most important thing in life, especially in jams.
Huh. Yeah.
Well, it's one thing you have to deal with, right? Because there can only be one winner, right? I mean, there's different categories, so somebody can win each category, but only one person gets to win the category. And there are a lot of games in this jam, and there are a lot of teams, especially this jam. So we've already, we're not on the wall of shame, so that's one win for us right there.
Well, who knows? We might end up there if somebody actually opens the game and it doesn't work the way I expect it to.
Oh, well, we're not on the wall of shame yet. So anyway, what I'm trying to say is you kind of have to let go of making a game in order to win the jam and make the game in order to improve yourself as a person who makes games.
Mm-hmm.
So this was definitely an exercise in not working towards winning a jam and just working towards laying out some goals and accomplishing those goals. And you and I both did things that we hadn't done before and don't know how to do, and now we have done them and have a better idea of how to do them.
Right. And, I'm looking forward to, what is it, the next little jam. Um, I mean, nothing special about it. It's just another opportunity for us to work on something and to have all the fun of starting something, but also all of the pain and misery in finishing it is rewarding on its own right.
Well, I mean, no pain, no gain, right? That's what they say.
Yeah,
And,
definitely.
and whatever doesn't kill you will annoy you for the rest of your life as a pain in your side.
Like shrapnel.
Like shrapnel, yes.
Well, I think I said about everything I can about this game. I've probably reiterated my point and soured somebody's perception of me by giving the wrong message about one poorly phrased half-baked thought in one direction or another. Just kidding. I feel like I rambled a little bit this entire thing because I feel like I don't feel uneasy, but what I do feel is that there's just like I don't have a strong opinion one way or another because I'm an anything goes kind of person, and to come out of this with like a hard, decisive message is not something that you can do other than at least do what's best for you and have fun and make a game and be good. I mean, that's the campy safe morals.
Well, I am also a chill, easygoing type of person, and I didn't feel strong one way or another with the theme. It didn't jump out at me and give me any like really great ideas that I was super excited for. But that is also a challenge, you know,
Mm-hmm.
when you get somebody telling you to do something that you're not excited for, but you still want to do a good job at it. That's something that you're going to have to learn how to deal with. And I'm not trying to say that the jam had a bad theme. I just didn't have like some really great idea that I had to do. But I'm happy with the fact that we stuck to it. We set a goal that I think we knew right from the start had a good chance of people not understanding, and we probably weren't going to get a whole lot of points for it. And I mean, that we experienced that with Burger Game because nobody understood that game, and that's our fault, you know, because we made the game and it's incomprehensible. So, you know, that's on us, and we have to learn how to not do that. But on the at the same time, we we set our goals and we accomplished our goals and we learned what we wanted to learn and we produced the product we wanted to produce. And that's important. And I'm happy we did that. And I think I said that already. And we're both rambling now. So I'm done. I think I've said what I had to say.
Yeah. Don't take nothing I said, you know, too seriously. And
Are you talking to me?
no, not you.
Oh,
Viewers, like you,
listeners?
listeners.
Listeners,
Well, I mean, if
why have
you're
you listened to this? Are you here? Why are you still here?
are you
We're not
asleep?
gonna have. There's not gonna be a secret ending. The secret code to enter into the Grandpa game to get the fancy power up so you can go shoot everybody is not actually in the game, and we're not going to reveal that here.
Yeah, that won't be coming for at least another month.
Maybe we should open source this. I mean, it's up on GitHub, and
No.
other people can see that, right?
Yeah, it's all of our games. I put Burger Game on Bitbucket because I was gonna do some Wii stuff with it, but I might just move it back in all of its former shape and just call it what it is. I mean, anybody who's
Well,
interested can find the source anyhow.
yeah, they can go poke around at the Grandpa game and see our nasty rat's nest that ended up in the code from the ideas that ended up being cut.
It's definitely worth looking at. At least parts of it are. I think there might be something that you can learn from in there. Um, And
Yeah, what not to do? Ha ha!
high five. We managed to not have a single script that wasn't used in the game, and I might be biting my tongue, but I'm pretty sure that I deleted all the scripts that I didn't know what they did.
Well, did you delete my rotate script?
I don't know. Maybe.
It was a script called rotate, and it said, I think it was like it grabs the transform and applies a rotation that we used for the debugging spheres.
Oh yeah, the orbs.
Yeah, those things were so cool. We had these orbs floating in the void outside the map just to show where there wasn't map, and they looked so cool and mysterious that we wanted to put them back in the game, but then we forgot how, so they stayed out.
Yeah. Or void.
Yeah, orbless void with no rotating script.
Well, remember, children, brush your vegetables and always eat your teeth.
Definitely do not respect your elders. They don't know what they're talking about. They grew up in a different time.
I bet you they're old and probably don't even know who you are.
Probably. And that's kind of sad. Okay, good night.
Good night, make a video game.